and more certification is coming from having adequate essential skills. That's process. I won't talk to that. I know that you have a lot of questions and we want to allow that, so.
Well, thank you very much, Sandy and Joe. I'm going to throw the floor open at this particular juncture and to see if anyone has any specific questions that we can perhaps start this discussion. Well, I'll actually, as my prerogative, ask the first question, which is about, partly because it is a piece that resonates through the province of Ontario, is about the question of assessment against the essential skills. So I'd like to ask, which tools are you using and how are you using them?
We work, when we're doing workplace, assessment is a very serious issue. If you get a score or an understanding of people's skills, it could be, it could have an impact on their employment. We don't really assess in the workplace. The instructors are proficient enough that they're able to determine skill levels and customize. Okay, and we do that in some very oblique kinds of ways, but good instructors can do that. They can figure out where's the level very quickly and move from that point forward. We do, if we do assessments, it's a very confidential thing. We do not turn the results over to the employer. We will talk about aggregate scores. We will talk, okay, people are scoring within this range, and this is the suggested program. Okay, we would never turn over an individual score. We have a number of assessment tools that we have made ourselves. Okay, for example, apprenticeship tools that basically have trade-specific kinds of questions in them. And those are home-crafted tools that we've used that we find to be reliable. Joe?
Thank you very much.
I never follow.
Yes. Hi.
I want to thank you for the presentations. I really enjoyed them. They're very informative. I have a question about how do you find the trainers and, I mean, instructors, and how do you train them?
It was a lot easier 10 years ago to find instructors. We recruit kind of the same way as we recruit for businesses. It's kind of every which way. You know, you talk to your friends, you put ads in the paper, you do that. We have a 10-module training certification for our instructors. I don't know if anyone met Margaret Dawson here from the Association of Workplace Educators, and they help us with that training, but the province does have a certification that we suggest people take. It's not mandatory. And it includes, there's a labor module, a business module, an essential skills module, but instructor recruitment and retention is a challenge because they're part-time folks, and so it's something that's an ongoing challenge for us.
In Manitoba, we're not as formalized as to have the 10-module certification, which actually, Andy, we do have a competency framework for practitioners. And people sort of, what we have found is good teachers stay good teachers, and then there's the research crowd. And don't try to make one into the other, that doesn't work, okay? So in Manitoba, we recruit for both kinds of activities. As Joe says, capacity at the moment is a huge issue because of the infusion of labor market agreement money into the provinces. Suddenly we're faced with, we had our nuts and bolts funding also, and we're way up here. Careful what you wish for. So the kind of creature that's very good in the workplace is used to, okay, hello, I need you to go to this address at 2 p.m. Friday and find out what's going on. Click. And they're the kind of people that can go in and do a needs assessment on the spot and knows the workplace very well and can come out and give us a high-level description of what's going on, what's needed. And, it's sort of an aptitude, if you will. We do train people up in it, but it makes them very nervous. So those are the few and far between kinds. We do more reactive training. So this year, big focus on evaluation, big focus on needs assessment. So we're doing training for our practitioners on those topics. So we sort of roll with the waves of what are the interesting topics.
We'll go to the back first.
Thank you very much, James. Thanks, great presentation as always. My question is actually around assessment. And I'm curious in both cases, how do you assess the actual learning culture of the workplace? And the reason why I'm asking that question is quite often we can respond to the training needs or the questions, but sometimes the culture that's within that workplace, do you include that in your assessment as in what's their history of training and how do we, because I think that's really important. I wonder if both of you can speak to that a little bit about where that piece fits.
It tends to be part of the needs assessment.
Is it a series of actual questions in the needs assessment?
We would talk about culture of the workplace changes. Oftentimes you're writing in code in the needs assessment because you're trying to be positive and as I said before, there's 2 tools to assess workplace culture that I use, and they're your ears and your eyes. And you're looking what's on the bulletin board. Is there a lunchroom? Is there, does the CEO talk to the shop floor worker? Is the union getting along well with it? All those things that you're constantly looking for. Your people have to be trained to do that.
Yeah, I like that description that Joe has, your ears and your eyes, because that's really what it's like. You're taking in all of this information, what people say and what they don't say. The hidden stuff, right? I always call it the first 3 weeks of hell in a program where we're all going along according to the plan, and then once they trust the instructor, they say, what's really going on, and you find this rapid, sharp sort of, well, we thought we were doing document use, but it's really over here, so you get that kind of stuff going on. But we do ask questions. I've been in places where it's apparent they don't have a big training culture overall. And so I say to them, what was the most successful training you've had recently? Often in those kinds of cultures, it'll be safety training. First aid, something like that.
That's legislative.
Yeah. And you say to them, well, why was it successful? And they'll describe the model that they used to deliver the training and how it's transferred to the floor. And you go, we should imitate that. Okay, so particularly in training poor companies, you want to find out, well, what would cause it to live on? What would cause them to go, oh, this is good,
Just to follow up to that, we do a lot of communications programs, and we'll go into some workplaces and they'll say, we have a real communications problem, and they'll run through things and I'll say, you know what, I'm not going to send an instructor in there. This is not something that an essential skills class can fix. You have a sick organ, I don't say that, but this is not something, so some workplace cultures, if you're going to do a true partnership, you have to say no.
Yeah, so it's a good point in that what Joe is saying. I always call it determine the cause. So you want to have a strong cause effect, and it really is a training issue, and it really is a soft skills training issue, which is what Joe just said. And the way that we look at things is, and what we've been describing is the workplace is a system with many subsystems. And you have to understand all of the subsystems around you because you don't exist in isolation. And I mean, when we first started practicing, and you go in and you sort of do this thing, and you've got your best instructors and all, you'll manage with it didn't work. It's usually because of another subsystem that's impacting what you're doing that really is out of your control. So now, you know, lessons learned, the bruises and the sleeplessness, all that stuff, you have to understand the other things that can impact your success.
Thank you very much.
I remember having a conversation with an owner of a company once, and he said, you know, my employees have a real problem. I said, well, what's that? Well, we're bringing a new system in, and they can't understand the manual, and they're having real trouble with it. And I said, well, when's the last time you asked them to read and do things at work? And he said, well, never. And I said, well, when we say that, we have a problem? Like, you haven't asked people to read and write for 20 years at your workplace? And all of a sudden, this is our problem. It's not their problem. And we have to work it through. And so sometimes the light bulb goes off, and they say, okay, that is our problem. You're not good at what you don't do.
Good.
Okay, my question is really about the infrastructure, because it strikes me as we're hearing the descriptions from Nova Scotia and Manitoba, that there's a really, that it all rests on a sort of complex infrastructure that includes instructors, it includes partnerships, it includes relationships, it includes trust, and of course funding and communications and policies. And I'm hearing, you know, from the other provinces that the infrastructure is not there, so they're trying to figure out how to develop the infrastructure. I wonder if either of you or both of you could sort of walk us through how the process unfolded in terms of developing the infrastructure.
You know, I have a sort of a saying that some of the best decisions that we make are some of the worst decisions that we make, and the hardest decisions that we make. So when you think about, for example, who's going to teach your programs? Are you going to have a customized group that you train of instructors that may be hard to get and may be transient, but you can train them, you can do that, or are you going to have a community college deliver your program, which is a much different flavor. So, you know, either way you go, you're either working with an institution or you're working with, those are very fundamental decisions that you're making and can really affect what you're doing. Same thing as assessment. You have to make those fundamental decisions. Are we going to put people through standardized tests? Are we going to do it informally? Are we going to be a government organization, or are we going to be not? The choices that you make there, sometimes you might not have any choice, but I think they really affect how you operate. And I think that's one of the problems is who's going to take ownership for this, and how do you make that web work? And life's hard enough anyway. So oftentimes I think it probably falls by the wayside with the provincial governments. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, I think that actually in both provinces we have, Nova Scotia and Manitoba are very interesting. For some reason, programs that work in Nova Scotia work well in Manitoba and vice versa. And we've had that history for a long time. They have sector councils, so do we. Very few other provinces, if any, actually have sector councils, okay? We've had, and so has Nova Scotia, very charismatic, aggressive apprenticeship directors. One shared. And they have driven a requirement for essential skills, okay, attached to the apprenticeship system, which typically executive directors describe as an industry support system, not training. It's about the workplace. You get that kind of flavor going on, as well as a heavy investment in industry, which some governments don't want to do, but both of these provinces, in addition to our programs, have sector council programs. We have something called industry expansion. They have other kinds of direct supports to industry. In that context, they need us because they can't make the other stuff work. And it makes sense to them. And part of the reason you've seen such an uptake with workplace literacy and the 9 essential skills is because they are in the language of the workplace. And so these contexts in which we operate are away from the institutional education context. We speak industry language. The essential skills speak
industry language. Open a profile